afternoon or good morning. My name is Port Wilson with the Atlanta Digital World Summit podcast, and I am here today at Arnall Golden Gregory with my partner, Sarah Smith.
Hi, Port.
Hi, Sarah.
It was good driving in that traffic with you down here this morning. I'm very jealous of these lawyers in the room that have to go through that traffic all the time.
At least they got a nice view here.
Oh my God, it's hot. The sexy office.
Well, we'd like to start, we begin with Matthew Wilson, who has a wonderful last name, and he is going to introduce our panel for today. Would you take it away, sir?
I will. Thanks, Port and Sarah. Appreciate you all coming down today. So I am Matt Wilson, as mentioned. I lead our, co-lead, technically, our entertainment and sports team here at AGG. And I'm going to introduce my colleagues. Going around the table, starting to the left, is Avery Carter. Avery's an associate in our sports and entertainment team. She's in the litigation practice group, and she's a youngster, as they say around here. Next around the table is Paula Nagarajan. Paula's a corporate lawyer like myself. She works in transactionals law, primarily focused on finance, corporate issues, corporate governance matters. And she has a background in sports, which I think is pretty unique. Paula was a certified agent in the NFL. She was also a cheerleader at a large SEC school, one that's known probably more for their brains than their football skills, Vanderbilt. And her husband's also a ex-high school basketball player and professional basketball player in, I'm sorry, I said high school, college basketball player and professional basketball player in Europe, and he still works in the sports world. And then last but not least, one of the founding fathers of our sports and entertainment team, Tucker Barr. Tucker, like Avery, is also a litigator. He focuses on trademark matters, but also does a lot in the advertising space. And Tucker was once a Houston Astro. In the organization, anyway. Right?
That's right. Yeah. Didn't quite make it to the major leagues.
But importantly, Tucker once played catch with 80-year-old Bob Feller.
Hello.
Before a minor league game in Lansing, Michigan, if I recall. And an hour later into the game, the San Diego Chicken was dressed like a shark, ate Tucker while on the field.
Interesting afternoon for sure. Yeah, that's minor league baseball encapsulated in 10 seconds.
So that's our team. And just a caveat, I think there's a misnomer somewhat in what sports law is. It's not necessarily an area of law. It's more of a overarching umbrella that describes our client base, kind of an amorphous sense. Sports clients can range from what you think of as talent and athletes, sports teams, but also, businesses that operate in the realm, media companies, all kinds of matters. And they all require a pretty broad expertise, ranging from employment law to tax law to litigation to corporate. So our team reflects that. We're pretty diverse and we do different things. But, we like to work with the sports folks.
There's a lot going on in the world of sports today. It seems like there's a lot of new stuff happening. And we did start to talk about that yesterday. Where do you think we should start?
Well, let's get right past what people really think they already know about sports.
Okay.
What do you think is the top issue facing your firm in the realm of sports law?
Us specifically, I think we all kind of do different things, like I said. For me, most of my exposure to current sports topics involves NIL, contracts from the brand side, mostly for us. We do some work from the athletes' talent side.
Can you just tell everyone what NIL is?
Oh yeah, of course.
The uninitiated?
Yeah, name, image, and likeness is the is what the acronym stands for, and that mostly means publicity rights. When you're talking about engaging talent to promote your brand, you think of influencers and endorsement agreements primarily, but there's all kind of other stuff happening out in the world, and it has a somewhat of a fallout in what the effect it has on sports teams, on colleges, on competitiveness, on employment matters, perhaps. The law's trying to play catch up, and like everything else, that just creates chaos.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed, and it affects us. It's become a legal issue, and that's what I call the professionalism of amateur sports. It seems like everything is accelerating downward. such that you can have 9 or 10-year-olds that are social media stars. We all know who they are. My son, who's 16, knows who all these kids are. And with that comes all sorts of things, especially with NIL and the changing rules. I mean, you can have a very financially successful 15-year-old football star, which sounds crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah. So the legal issues are, kind of moving from the realm of a tightly kind of confined group of professionals to all kinds of things, all kinds of kids, all kinds of sports, across all kinds of media. And so I would say the world of sports law, so to speak, is expanding rapidly.
How do you keep up with it?
It's difficult, very, very difficult. I mean, the landscape has changed so quickly. The best we can do is kind of go back to our fundamentals as lawyers, whether that's, my world and IP, they're all the same. We just apply them in different realms and do our best to guide, whoever it is that's our client, through the landscape. But I think it's changing quicker for the folks who are, in the world performing versus the lawyers. It's just us kind of engaging new clients and new kind of avenues and, working with different kinds of people. But the fundamentals of the legal stuff that we do is pretty much the same.
Does it vary from state to state?
It depends on what you're talking about, for sure. I mean, we can get into this later, but when you talk about things like online gambling, I mean, the rules are so state specific, and to the extent that's sports law, which I think it is. I mean, it's absolutely very state specific. Same with publicity rights; those tend to be creatures of state law, and it varies from state to state.
Can I ask a really naive question?
Sure.
I think it varies from state to state, but I'm gambling online.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, tricky question, right? And I think that it just turns basically on where your bettors are coming from, where the money flows are starting.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you open your platform up to people in Georgia, you better comply with Georgia law.
Yeah, the geo-tracking works, right? That's why we can't watch Braves games on Bally's.
I think Paula wanted to say something.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that I think recently the Georgia legislature had gotten really close to legalizing sports betting in Georgia, but at the last minute, it sounds like we have to kick the can until next year again. The legislature wasn't able to come to an agreement about how they were going to use the tax money that would flow from the sports betting. So I don't know if you're betting in Georgia, it may be illegal, right?
Right.
So
right.
That's how you're able to do it online.
That's what
Fort Wilson, everybody.
And his address.
Do you need a lawyer?
I will probably.
You were just joking about that.
Yeah, I don't bet.
I know. Come on. Avery, what do you think?
I think that it also depends on, what's your definition of gambling, because there's all these apps out there that, a lot of my friends use that what you might think is gambling is not actually gambling. And so these companies have found a way to kind of circumnavigate themselves around that. So it all just depends on what exactly is gambling and betting.
Right.
Well, I know we can go down this road a long way, but let's go to your specialty a little bit. Is it NIL? What is your specialty here?
So as Matt said, I just started this year. So this is my first year. But I definitely have a huge interest in NIL. Specifically, I just recently wrote an article on how Title IX, the way Title IX affects schools and institutions is in the sports realm anyways, is they have to, provide equitable opportunities to male and female athletes. And so there hasn't really been anything out there yet from courts or state governments or anything about how Title IX applies to these in the NIL world. But I mean, realistically speaking, the huge NIL deals, we're talking, $10 million are going to the star quarterbacks. They're not going to, unless a school has Caitlin Clark, who's was the star basketball player at Iowa, but now on the Indiana Fever, these female athletes are not going to be receiving the same opportunities in the NIL world as the male athletes are.
Especially if they don't make the Olympic team.
Right.
Like she did not make. I'm wondering, are you guys going to see, or what should we look for during the Olympics?
It's a great question.
What are we looking for? Advertisements, ads with athletes?
That's always been the case, right? But the Olympics is an interesting case because they're very protective of their marks and how the rings, for example, can be used in any sort of advertisement.
Okay.
So most things that are, in any way reflecting the Olympics as a name or as a brand has been approved or just official engagements by the Olympics. So I'm sure there will be other kind of secondary brands and folks that want to be associated indirectly using those athletes for things. I'm not sure, are Olympic athletes forbidden from taking on advertising contracts? That's not a thing anymore.
No, of course not. In fact, I watched the Olympic track trials that are out in Eugene, or I think they're still going on. Maybe they're over. But most of those athletes have contracts with Nike or Adidas and are compensated. For all intents and purposes, are professionals.
They just can't present themselves as a U.S. Olympic team members.
That's right. That's right.
When did that change? It used to be the amateur status thing.
Right. Yeah, that's right. A lot has changed. And you asked the question, what should we look for? I kind of go back to this commercialization of everything. It used to be stars were made at the Olympics. They win, you know who they are after that. I think now it's superstardom from the very start.
Right.
And everyone. And I think you're going to see a lot more marketing in advance of the Olympics, during the Olympics, as opposed to, hey, this is who I am now. I want a gold medal. And America then becoming familiar with who the athlete is. I think now it's, all that is on the front end. And there's some risk too. And I guess the lady who was supposed to win the 800 meters, in fact, won an 800 meter gold in the last Olympics. Just had a terrible thing happen during her qualifying race and fell. And so didn't qualify. And so there's always that risk, I guess, for companies that invest heavily in sports personalities that they actually won't make it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Paula, as a former sports agent, how early does that start? I mean, how do they take on amateurs versus pros? I mean, like you're going to be a sports agent for an 11-year-old, right?
Yeah, except that the 11-year-old doesn't have the ability to contract, so
That's right.
until you're 18. But that adds to all of the issues with NIL, like we were talking about, with some of this commercialization that we're talking about. It's the waters have really muddied, I think, since July 2020, when the NCAA decided that they were going to allow athletes to profit off of their NIL. And the Olympics, I think, is maybe a little bit different because those people are professionals, and maybe there are one or two that are pretty young, but a lot of times they're professionals and they're not subject to the NCAA rules. They've already been through college. But it has gotten really messy in the last 3 years when we think about these opportunities that have come up in these kids, essentially, that are being thrown these deals and potentially have parents that aren't lawyers and don't know how to look at these contracts and are just seeing the dollar signs, and maybe they sign up to these deals and can lose NCAA eligibility. They can, contract away their NIL for the next 10 years. There's just a lot of crazy stuff that people can put in contracts, and that can affect the student athlete for years to come.
And when the NIL laws were first popping up, there was not a uniform system in any way, and states had different kind of baselines, and some states were far more protective of the student athletes. For example, Georgia's first law had two interesting elements in it. One was kind of a collectivization of a certain portion of the revenue, and another was the schools had to provide professional counseling, lawyers and accountants to the athletes, so they would, at least understand what some of these terms meant, hopefully before they signed away their lifetime NIL rights. But all those laws went away as soon as it, the NCAA sanctioned it, and so at that point it was a race to the bottom.
Do you think that these universities have new departments with they do?
For sure. I mean, one of my friends from law school actually was hired as the NIL compliance director at UGA.
That's a new job.
Yes, that's a new position. I think originally it
interesting.
I think originally it kind of fell under director of player engagement, but they really had to, because of a school like UGA, which draws in massive NIL deals. I think he's hired even specifically just for the football team.
Okay.
dealing with their NIL deals. But it's definitely schools have had to, massive schools like UJ or Alabama, they probably have to develop an entire department devoted just to NIL.
That's amazing.
I know we probably need to move on to a couple other things, but one last thing. And how does NIL go into the whole Gen AI? Is that how, am I saying it right? Gen AI? I mean, using your likeness, you don't even have to be there, your voice, your image.
Yeah, that's being sorted out. It's become more of an issue currently on the music side of the entertainment world, somewhat in the film and TV space. But for example, the state of Tennessee just passed a new law called the Elvis Act, properly named because it was directed at replicating or just trying to be similar to the voice of a celebrity, in this case Elvis. And then in our contracts, I don't want to talk about music, but we are certainly saying that you can't, if you're a record company, you can't use the talent's sound recordings or videos to then replicate that artist. So I think that will, translate across the board in all contexts.
In that vein, I just want to jump over to Taylor Swift.
Sports star.
Re-recording. Well, the sports and entertainment, right? She's an entertainer. Recently re-recording all of her albums.
She got a lot of flack for that.
She did, but she also got a lot of money and people that supported her, especially her fans were like, yay, and now they won't listen to her old albums. But do you think that's going to change contracts?
She's a unique force, and there's not many people that can tell her his or her fan base to listen to the new version of my records.
Yeah. So no.
Yeah.
And she had such a, I just went and saw her in Scotland, so I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan.
There you go.
She had, I think, like he said, the Swifties are a powerful force, and she had a pretty public duel with
Big Machine.
the guy, and so I think she kind of influenced all of her fans. Like these are the bad guys. I'm re-recording this music.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case for others. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting world where you can have. I'm not a big social media person, but I know on Instagram, occasionally I'll get a very creative person who's taken Johnny Cash's voice and put it to a Taylor Swift song. And it's genius. It's incredible. It's fun to listen to. But you can absolutely see, while it's great and our laws in some sense should always support creativity and innovation, that sort of thing. You can also see if you're Johnny Cash's estate, why you'd have a major problem with it for a lot of reasons. So it's going to be interesting how all of that shakes out.
Well, the funny thing is Instagram, my wife's on Instagram a lot. She's an influencer, and they have Instagram jail people go into, and they have trending sounds, trending music, and then she's on it so much she'll say, "Do this." I'm like, "Dude, I don't do Instagram," but it's the oversight is amazing.
Yeah,
they just shut people down sometimes.
For sure.
As a sports guy, I would like to talk a little bit about. You mentioned the streaming, sports media rights, and you said you can't even watch Braves games. Where does a fan go when your team is not on TV?
Well, I listen to the Braves on the radio because I can't get Bally's. But I think I'm not the bellwether for the market. I think there's a lot of ways around those blackouts. If you're, even semi-savvy with technology, you can figure out ways around that. But yeah, good question. I mean, the shifting landscape in media rights in terms of exclusivity. And how those contracts are awarded and the amount of dollars involved is probably one of the bigger issues that we're going to continue to talk about for a while.
And with the Braves, I actually had to download an app called Fubo, which is something I had no desire to sign up for. But I'm a big Braves fan, and I have to watch my Braves, and that was the only way I could figure out to do it.
Fubo.
On Fubo. So
is it Fubo or Fubu?
Fubo. It's mainly for like international soccer. Or football.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. So
make a note.
Yeah, I'm thinking about dropping Xfinity because this has everything I need, and there's no need to pay both Xfinity and Fubo.
I know, right?
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, I know with AI, and one of the things they said you had to watch out for. In Wimbledon, they were using AI to do highlight reels, and they have live people sitting there. I mean, that can do it. And why are they using AI? Are we like in danger of just like, you know what? We got a color guy that can do you without being you.
Wow. I mean, that's an absolute risk.
I think it's a question of taste, right? I mean, there's AI can recreate things that it's trained to create, but you're not going to have that spark of human creativity that, I like to listen to Skip Carey in the old days because you never knew what the guy was going to say.
Yeah.
And, that's not going to happen with a trained piece of software.
Right. And like if, Serena Williams was commentating on a women's match, I would way rather listen to her, an expert that has played the game, than an AI voice.
Right. We did touch upon the referees a little bit yesterday, and I'd like to dive into that because there is something very, very exciting about the, human error on the field, because it happens. I can't remember the huge controversy with the New Orleans Saints a couple of years ago. There was one play that they said
it was pass interference, but they didn't call it.
The whole season, right? The whole season.
It's not going to be fun to watch the baseball manager argue with the computer.
Right.
I think
Angel
charge
Hernandez
the
retired,
mound.
so
That's good news for everybody.
I think it's helpful if it's used to supplement the umps or the referees or whatever, whoever it is. But I don't think it can fully replace referees. Like, for example, VAR has been around a long time in soccer to show offsides or if there's a goal. And that's if, the referee is maybe made a very questionable call, or they themselves are not sure if something was offsides or not. They can go back and look at that. But it's not completely replacing the referee on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we get to a point where I can question every single call.
Yeah. But they have limits.
What are they?
In the NFL, you can only make a few. You can only challenge a few things. You're limited. You can't challenge and make the game 8 hours long. Even though I would love to do that, especially if the Buffalo Bills are playing. They're my team.
So
that would be painful watching them lose for 8 hours.
Oh, stop.
So I would
say it not.
I'd like to use this opportunity to voice my objections to all of it.
Let's hear it.
As a baseball player, I'm kind of a traditionalist.
And I want to hear from Paula after you.
Yeah, for sure. And I just can't stand replay. I can't stand the robo strike zone that's going to be in MLB sooner rather than later. I think
what's the robo strike zone?
Well, that's my kind of euphemism for a digitally verified strike zone.
Okay.
That can be challenged. I think so. I was a catcher, and so I had kind of this intimate relationship with umpires who, literally are inches from your head, and you talk with them throughout the game, and they're humans just like we are, and there's kind of a beautiful part of the game that maybe people that watch it on TV don't see, and that's kind of you get in a groove with an umpire, and every umpire's strike zone is different, and it's your job as an athlete to adjust to it. But whether you're a hitter and the strike zone's bigger than you'd like it to be, or you're a pitcher and it's smaller than you'd like it to be, and that's a beautiful part of the game that I wish could be preserved. I get it though. So many millions of dollars are at stake. These people's careers are at stake. My heart went out a couple of years ago to a pitcher who threw a perfect game for all intents and purposes, but the last out was called safe. It was the worst call probably in the history of baseball, and he lost his perfect game over it. And so you can see the value in that injustice being rectified, but still, I think you lose a lot when you have perfect officiating, especially in baseball. I know that's coming though, but I kind of wish it wasn't.
No, I agree with you that the imperfections are what make sport so exciting.
Mm-hmm. But they're the things we still talk about.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right.
The controversial calls.
Yeah, like the Saints thing you just brought up. I wouldn't have remembered.
I'm
that
not
game.
even a Saints fan, and I remember
neither.
this too. And how angry that whole town was. Like,
right.
Don't go there.
And I remember that call at first. I think that was Angel Hernandez again.
It might have been. We might as well blame him for it, even if it wasn't.
Yeah, I know, right?
I want to hear what Ms. Paula thinks.
Well, with respect to football, I think that something like pass interference is, like, by definition, discretionary. There's no perfect definition of what pass interference is. All of us would have different versions of what that looks like. So to have that be officiated by AI, maybe I'm partly a traditionalist, which I wouldn't have thought. It doesn't seem like it would work. It's kind of like taking part of the game that we love so much.
Right.
And like you were saying, Sarah, I do think that there's a level of, it's heart-wrenching when you're on the wrong side of it, but it's part of the game. And as fans, we love that emotional connection to the game. So I'm hoping we don't get too far deep, into that aspect, like Tucker was saying as well. And one of the things, just a funny note on the referees in football, I love some of the referees. I mean, like Ed Hockley and now his son, like it's just part of the game. I grew up watching these guys and now they have their own kids. And it's like, it's interesting. So I don't want to watch a computer doing that.
No. I love when the referees are getting yelled at by the coaches and they have absolutely no change in their expression whatsoever.
One of the refs could have their own NIL deals.
They do?
No, maybe.
Oh my God.
But they're all interested in their content.
I think Matthew just struck a match.
They are. I mean, someone like Ed Hockley, I mean, he's well known. We all know the tight shirt and the big muscles. But my husband does a lot of content for sports for high school basketball players, and he will go to these games and he captures and creates the content for a lot of the players, and the teams or the coaches, they'll hire him. But referees have also asked for him to take video of them during games. They want to post it. They want to share it. They want to, become, I guess, professional referees, and it's useful for them as well.
As time goes by, everybody gets more and more media savvy.
Yeah.
Right? I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
We're talking about fans' enjoyment of the game. And let's just switch over to college football. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, the expanded college playoffs and the realignment. I mean, my team, I went to the University of Colorado. They moved to the Pac-10, Pac-12, Pac-34, whatever it was. And then they moved back. Every year we look for Oklahoma, Nebraska games. They don't even play anymore. I mean, and we got Alabama and Georgia. Is there anybody else? I mean, what's going on with realignment?
It's money at the end of the day, right? It's Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. Why? Because they want exposure. They want the TV rights packages. They want their players to be on every weekend on TV so that they can attract better players. I mean, it all comes down to, I think the dollar, which I'll let Tucker and Paula speak more to this, but it ultimately is going to make college, especially football, far less interesting. The NFL, the MLB, they all have consent decrees with the federal government, so they're not deemed monopolies per se, but so they're able to implement rules that and somewhat restrict trade, but it makes the leagues more competitive. College, they're going in the opposite direction.
That's a shame, because really college football and college sports in general is the most exciting to watch.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing are the great programs are getting greater, and the kind of marginal programs are losing their players, and they're losing their players because of NIL and the money, but also the free transfer rules. And so,
what's a free transfer?
It means in the old days, if you were at a university, you couldn't just leave. You'd have to get a release from your school. Or you could leave and you'd have to sit out a year. So there's
if you're an athlete.
If you're an athlete.
Okay.
So there's a big disincentive to move around a lot. There are exceptions to that. I think if your head coach left your program, you could leave and go wherever you wanted. But what I'm seeing, and I follow a lot of college baseball, is that these coaches have a lot of pressure to win, and they want their teams to be really, really good. And so they've almost resorted to not even bringing in a particularly strong freshman class anymore. They just see who has done well at the Division II level, or who's done great in junior college, who's already kind of a proven commodity, and stacking their teams with older players. And so the days of bringing in a freshman class, maybe one of them plays right away, but the rest of them develop so that by the time they're juniors and seniors, they're stars. Those days are kind of over because there's pressure to perform now. It's not uncommon to have a college senior who's played at 4 different schools. And I know that's probably happening in football and other sports too.
Do you think that because of the huge amount of time we're trying to fill streaming content with almost anything, that the smaller schools might something might change there and turn around? Because if we're watching this new U.S. Football League, which is horrible, but I have hopes, but I've been watching it. Maybe we can watch really bad schools play. And
well, there's cool things like the Savannah Bananas, right? Are you familiar with them? I mean, it's
saying.
baseball and it's entertainment all wrapped up in a package.
Right.
I haven't been to a game, but I've seen a lot of clips, social media ready, and that is, I think, specifically driven by the media access, social media specifically, and the platform that they give, the opportunity to be weird.
And they just sold out Wrigley Field.
Oh, yeah.
what?
Yeah.
The tickets are insane.
Yeah,
There's
I
a
mean
waiting
those
list.
guys on the team and the team that they play against, I think they're called the Party Animals. They all have like thousands of followers on TikTok and Instagram, and their girlfriends have tons of followers just from going to the games and posting.
This is interesting. I can see this happening. This will happen. Tucker, you're going to be happy.
The one thing I'll say with the great thing about streaming and all these different platforms, it's confusing and it's all driven by money, et cetera. But the good news for the sports fan, the consumer, is that you can watch pretty much what you want to watch when you want to watch it.
Right.
Whether that's a University of Alabama football game, baseball game, or a Division II school's women's soccer game, you can find it.
Except for Sundays, trying to watch football anywhere other than
Right.
Sunday ticket.
Right. And we were talking about that. I'm nervous to buy NFL Sunday ticket this year because I know that they're splitting up the games away from YouTube and they're putting them on. Netflix is getting games and Prime Video is getting games. And I'm like, why should I pay for this?
I mean, YouTube, I saw, is projected to lose $9 billion between now and 2029 on what the current deal is. I mean, we'll see what happens with the lawsuit. But
With the NFL.
Yeah, with the NFL.
Okay.
The NFL Sunday ticket. So there's a lawsuit.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So YouTube is suing the NFL?
No. So YouTube was assuming the NFL ticket package, I believe, through 2029 as a contract. And I read that the annual revenue is somewhere in the 835 million range, and the annual loss is around 2.2 billion. So they're, I guess they figure it's worth it.
Yeah, it was a class action suit brought by people like you and me who were NFL Sunday ticket subscribers for the last 25 years. And I think it's in federal court somewhere in California. And it was brought against the NFL for creating this package and saying it's an antitrust issue because they were putting together this package that was super expensive. You could only get if you had Sunday ticket through DirecTV, now YouTube. You had to have a satellite dish. There were very few exceptions for being able to stream it through the internet. And it was artificially inflating the package of this price when some of these games were available for no cost with your, antenna cable on CBS and Fox. So that case is ongoing. I think it's going to go to appeal. I was reading something that said we wouldn't be surprised if it goes up to the Supreme Court, which will be really interesting, but that's going to take forever.
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental questions is the NFL has the right to grant exclusive rights to broadcast TV, but the argument is this is satellite, and so it's not included in the consent decree.
Well, while we're talking about large sums of money, sponsorship, naming rights, promotional agreements, how do you, what if I was big sponsor on YouTube and then have a contract through 2029 and then they start losing all that money? I mean, how did they navigate sponsorship?
If you're sponsoring a game, if you're a brand that wants to...
Exactly.
Well, from our perspective, I mean, most of what we do is on the brand side. So we craft contracts that are quote unquote brand friendly. Those include things like if we're bringing LeBron James in to promote a product, we want him to not promote any other similar products. We want him to post on his social media pages. We want him to not say dumb things in public. There's lots of contract terms that we create for our clients that are somewhat one-sided. LeBron James is a bad example because he has leverage to know all that stuff and still get as much money as he wants. But the point being, there's traditional legal concepts that we work with when we're dealing with those kind of situations. But there's nuances that involve sport that, like Tucker was talking about with the pile of money involved.
Well, what are naming rights then?
Well, it can be everything from facilities to a particular broadcast at a particular time. Having your brand associated with the event or the venue or whatever it is, or even, a league even perhaps. You see that with the Chick-fil-A College Football Hall of Fame. I mean, that's just combining a brand with the facility. There are all kinds of ways for getting brands to get involved and get exposure in the world of sports. And the risks involved too. I mean, it's for a brand, you have to be careful about who you align yourself with, and that's always true. Particularly in the sport or athletes in particular, that can be a very hazardous endeavor. And so and of course, most sophisticated companies are all over that and aren't going to put their brand out there with something that could lead to bad PR or all kinds of things.
There at one time was an Enron field, right?
Oh,
that's right. Yeah, for sure.
Is a Goodyear blimp still a thing?
Yeah, that's right.
I think it is.
But at the same time, there are huge opportunities, right? I mean, the sports have never been more popular. Athletes have never been more popular. And so there are giant opportunities to sign a deal with one athlete and your brand is in front of 10 million of their followers. So it's huge opportunities, huge risks, and giant piles of money.
And in the NIL context, we're seeing issues. Paula can speak to more, but with teenage athletes potentially getting paid and how that affects what used to be NCAA rules and still are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we touched on it a bit, but it's been interesting to see how, especially for athletes that are maybe coming from a background of we don't have all the money in the world. You didn't grow up with just like that privilege, and you're getting in front of you this contract for $2 million. And of course you're going to sign it. And it can be really difficult to then determine what happens next. So there was a case recently over this past season for two twin brothers they used to be at Overtime, which is here in Atlanta. And they had played during the season right after the NIL rules were relaxed by the NCAA. They signed a contract with Overtime. I think they even had tutors. It was supposed to be kind of like their high school year, their senior year in high school. However, their contract just said that it was pay for play. Essentially, it was a professional contract for services, and just because of a few words in their contract, they were ineligible when they tried to play at Chicago State this last season. The NCAA deemed them ineligible to play. I'm sure it was their life dream to play for a college basketball team, and now they no longer can play. I don't think that they are at the level of going into the NBA. So that's, essentially the end of their professional career or their basketball career. So it can have really dire consequences for these kids that may not have, the right background or the experience to really understand what they're signing up to. And it's unfortunate, but.
So there's no avenue, G League, nothing they can go forward if they have the talent to develop?
Go overseas. Right. But yeah, no, of course you can go to the G League. You can declare for the draft. I'm not sure if they are kind of, a very small percentage of people are going to make it to the NBA. And I'm not sure that they are in that echelon. So I think they were very much looking forward to spending some years in playing for a NCAA team, a basketball team in college.
Do they have any recourse?
They are fighting through the courts. I think most recently their injunction, a preliminary injunction was denied. I think that they're probably going to lose when it comes to the main case. And then it's like, do you have money to keep appealing?
And they'll probably be 25 at that point.
Yeah.
Right. So. Yeah, window's closed.
Yeah.
Well, it's a perfect example of, not that lawyers can save everything, but the right lawyer might have looked at that contract, and I don't know how old they were when they signed them, but may have hit the brakes and said, wait a minute, something's not right here. And so, unfortunately, I think it means for these athletes, it used to be, a skilled athlete would never deal with an attorney until, they're, drafted or in their 20s or a junior or senior in college. But some of these athletes now. It's not a bad idea to identify a lawyer to kind of help navigate. These families, I'm sure, are just overwhelmed with, here's the like Paula said, here's the contract for $2 million. So of course they're going to sign it. If it's $50,000, I mean, to my family growing up, that would have meant, the world. So there's a lot of temptation there, a lot of bad information, bad actors. So all the more reason to find a good advisor that can help. Situations like that could have been avoided.
This just makes me think about Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, that's a whole nother world. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't do the scene, please.
No, I won't.
Well, Sarah, my partner with the mind of a steel trap, we had a great conversation. What do you want to add? What do we have? What have we missed?
I was just looking at a couple of headlines in sports news today, and I just want to get just your reactions.
This is the lightning round.
It's just fun, Martina Navratilova gets into nasty feud with tennis reporter over anti-trans crusade accusation.
I'm not touching that one.
Bring it on. Okay, nothing. Got it.
I'll say this. Martina has very strong opinions. I'll give her that.
She is allowed.
And she was quite the superstar. When that headline came out, I talked about it with my kids and explained who she was. And man, it just reminded me of, what a competitor. I remember her as a kid growing up. And the battle she had, was it Chris Everett, that it seemed like they're always paired up against each other. Amazing athlete.
Stephen A. Smith reacts to Knicks blockbuster Mikal Bridges trade.
He's always reacting.
I was just going to say that.
What do you mean?
He's just over the top. He hates my Dallas Cowboys, so I don't.
You're Dallas Cowboys.
He hates everyone.
Yeah.
But that's his brand, right?
Yeah.
He
makes ridiculous statements and yells, and that's why people watch him. So
Yeah.
I think
So
he's
what
ranked.
It's worked out well for him.
Didn't he get into politics? I'd heard. Maybe.
Really?
You never know. Caitlin Clark - Angel Reese III draws highest WNBA ratings in 23 years.
Pro wrestling.
I love it.
I think it's awesome. I mean,
Tell me why.
I mean, well, I know for one, I tried to get tickets to see Caitlin was here, I think last week, and she's coming back. Well, the Indiana Fever, not just her. They're playing the Atlanta Dream, and they sold out. They actually moved the games to State Farm Arena, which is where the Hawks play.
Right.
And they sold out both games.
Nice.
So I think it's great for the sport. I mean, obviously, I think like maybe a minuscule of people are like the drama of those two, which I think is mainly made up. But I just love that people are paying attention.
I do too.
I think it's great for our little girls. I have a daughter, and she's a little brown girl, and her seeing Angel Reese, we watched it this weekend, and it was just really fun to be like, you can do that. And it's amazing, and it's just good for us.
It's great basketball. I mean, you think of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman. I mean, it's great. It's great to have kind of these opposing forces of nature and watch them go. It makes for great sports.
And I'm not sure we want to go down this avenue, but why is Angel Reese the bad guy?
Because her name is Angel.
Right. Well, I think the perception is that
Very
Caitlin Clark
religious
has
country.
Caitlin Clark is kind of the new name, the big name, just coming off the heels of the NCAA and the biggest contract and all the other money and all the media attention.
But why her over Angel Reese?
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I have some theories, but I'm not. that's no comment.
I hear you.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
Ex-NFL star doubles down on Bill Belichick pig comments over Jordan Hudson relationship.
Is that the young girl he's dating?
I don't know.
Yeah,
He's dating like a
so.
23-year-old girl, which is
Bill Belichick?
Ew.
Yeah. Did anyone watch
Almost
the
as
roast
bad
of
as
Tom
Bob
Brady?
Kraft going
That
to
was
the
pretty wild.
massage
It
parlor.
was wild.
I was going to make a bad joke about
Do it.
inflated balls. You cut that.
We got to keep that in. Former Celtics champions in nasty feud over parade ban claim.
I haven't heard this
What
one.
is this?
Me
Yeah.
neither.
Right now, the quote is, right now, I feel like you're ducking me. No idea. No idea what that
idea.
means.
I don't
I
know that
love
one.
Jalen Brown, though. He's from Atlanta.
He went to Wheeler, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll leave the Celtics alone. And who wants to have a parade in Boston anyway? Just get some clam chowder. Pat McAfee missed.
McAfee.
McAfee, I'm sorry. Pat McAfee missed WWE Raw over family tragedy.
That's sad.
I miss WWE
Avery.
Raw because I don't like it.
There you go. There you go. Skip Bayless questions of Caitlin Clark.
Gosh.
God, she's in everything. Skip Bayless questions of Caitlin Clark has that dog. I love that. Instead of bitch, they called her a dog in her after collapse versus Angel Reese's Sky. I mean, this is the New York Post today.
A very reputable source.
Absolutely.
Well, I think Skip is somewhat similar to Stephen A. Smith. He's just trying to make some headlines and stay relevant, really.
And when you put her name in a headline these days, I feel like people are going to read it.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Clickbait.
Yep. Creator Sports Network works to get younger viewers into live sports. Now, you guys had touched on esports yesterday a little bit. Can we just talk about some of the machinations and things that are happening in esports that you're looking at as sports attorneys?
Well, first, just being here in Atlanta, we're surrounded by a pretty tremendous gaming and esports community. The Atlanta Braves are well known for their social media and kind of tech forward thinkingness. If that's a word. I was visiting the Phillies stadium last year on a tour, and the GM of the Phillies said the Braves are known to be by far and away the best when it comes to things tech. So you could go to Truist Park in a VR world. We're the first stadium that has a VR component. The Braves,
so cool.
The Hawks, they've all been embracing esports and gaming. Last year, Ronald Acuna would host events at our friend's Skillshot and in his facility. That they're trying to engage the younger generation. I mean, baseball, the rules have changed for the purpose of trying to retain and gain new fans. Kids love screens, so you integrate esports and gaming into real sports. Call them real sports. So we get slapped by some folks around here.
No.
You know what I mean? It's that
We don't slap our guests.
that integration between tech and traditional sports is where we're going. That's VR.
It's happening.
AR, yeah.
It's happening already.
And it's such a gigantic industry because you have the competitive teams, you have the content creators, you have the venues that host them, you have the audiences that watch them. And I think I heard someone say once, a good way to think about esports is it's like having 100 football games going on at once. I mean, the audience is so huge, the revenue is so huge. It's only going to get bigger. And what I didn't realize until a few years ago is how competitive. Like it kind of made me smile because I'm used to video games, at home with my son plays a little bit, but these uber competitive teams and lots of money and lots of brands involved, all the supplements and the energy drink companies, and it's a giant industry that a lot of people just don't know anything about.
And big events. We have a client that is partnering with HBCUs, and they're promoting big weekend-long events that are broadcast live on Twitch and have millions and millions of viewers around the planet. Competing with numbers of the Super Bowl. It's incredible.
And HBCU Sports has its own network now, right?
Yeah, and I'm talking about esports. So we're talking about video gaming.
Okay, and I'm talking about traditional sports too.
But married.
Very exciting. What do you got, Paula? You're
Oh,
thinking.
no. This is interesting. I'm not one. I don't play video games, so I'm learning.
Well, the one thing I'll say about my son plays basketball, NBA 24, whatever it is. The only thing I really like about it is he'll play a classic Lakers team against a classic Celtics team. So he knows Kareem, he knows Kuzi, he knows all these people, which I'm like, okay, at least there's some history going on. It's not all Jalen,
That's right. And, I watched this kind of a sidetrack story, but Major League Baseball did a game at a really old stadium in Birmingham. I think it's Rickland.
For Willie Mays.
Yeah. And that part of that broadcast, what I thought was really cool is someone was on talking about how kids today, kids my son's age, getting to know the old Negro League players who they would have never had any exposure to through video games. They have Cool Papa Bell or Satchel Paige, paired
Josh
up,
Gibson,
facing Aaron Judge, and it's a really cool way to kind of connect to the past and have our kids learn something they never would have known anything about. And I thought that was a really cool story. I can't remember who mentioned it on the broadcast, but I thought that was great.
I have one more headline for you. This is a heartbreaker. You ready? This is so sad. ESPN is lowballing Stephen A. Smith with $18 million offer. God damn. That is so upsetting to me. Aren't you? I'm depressed for not the same reason you are. That is horrible. This money is crazy. Don't you think? It's a little crazy.
They generate it, right? I mean, people complain about CEO pay. I mean, when you're, who's the highest paid quarterback in the NFL now? Is it no longer
Green Bay?
No. Regardless,
Detroit?
I'm
We
flattening
don't know.
out on my brain.
For football fans, we don't know.
But the point is, I mean, they fill up stadiums, right? They put eyeballs on TV. They sell products. I mean, they're generating that money.
Yeah.
And that runs across the industries.
It's interesting because I was reading about them, the NFL training Tom Brady to be a sports commentator, and they're like really hoping he'll be good at it.
I bet it'll be phenomenal.
I bet he'll be good at it too. Yeah. And he's also a Delta spokesperson. Lord. Okay. In closing, what do you think is going to be the big moment in sports law in 2024? You can make it up if you want.
No, I was thinking there's so many different things.
Just one. You only get one.
I think it's something we've already talked about. I think it's this whole world of NIL and money and amateur sports and the NCAA and the constant evolution of what that's going to look like.
Got it.
A lot going on.
Paula, what do you think?
I think I very much agree. And I'd add the recent settlement to pay players and see how that plays out, and also the implications for Title IX, how that's going to be distributed amongst through these schools to the players to make sure that it's equitable amongst men and women. And that'll be really interesting over the next year, I think, and alongside the NIL discussion.
Avery.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's a court case out there right now. Well, there's several court cases out there right now, trying to decide whether or not these athletes can be considered employees of the university. And if that happens and they have to be paid as employees of the university, these small schools are going to shut down because they're going to have to cancel their sports teams. They're not going to be able to pay them. So I don't know if that's going to be the next year, but.
Okay. No, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
We have to think about that and watch for that. Mr. Wilson.
I think my colleagues here touched on everything. I think maybe this year, maybe going forward, but the continued evolution of streaming and other access points to sports will continue to be dynamic and impactful. I'm curious to see how that plays out with the leagues, with the players. Are players going to have their own channels that they can eventually use as a kind of a secondary screen you can watch the game on your TV or your streaming service, and also watch your favorite player's social media platform, give his fun facts and stats and shots on the sideline.
Well, the Manning brothers have kind of proven that concept with their kind of parallel Monday Night Football broadcast. With their commentary as the game's going on. I think it would be an interesting platform for viewers.
Yeah,
I'm tuning in for the Tucker Barr channel.
You don't want to listen to me watch a baseball game. Mostly yelling at the TV and saying, "Why did he throw that pitch? It was a mistake." Anyway,
we might like the swearing. That's always fun. Reminds me of my childhood.
Color commentary.
Exactly. We are so happy to be here at is it Arnall or Arnall? Arnall Golden Gregory. And if you need a lawyer, give him a call. For Port Wilson and myself, Sarah Smith, and our wonderful audio engineer, Ben Norton. I forgot your name for a second.
He's just Ben.
He's just Ben. Just Ben. There's a song by Michael Jackson about you. No, never mind.
That's cold.
That's about a rat. No. Anyway, we are so happy to be here today. Thank you. And for the Atlanta Digital World Summit podcast, we are out.